All right, here we are today, and welcome everybody to this new episode of Above the Physical, our podcast with our special guest, Kasey Gehret, if I pronounce it correctly. And today it's about discovering a completely unknown world. Because Kayse, I'm going to introduce you a little bit, and then you are going to tell much more about what you do, what is that you love doing, and how you help people. But first of all, let me introduce you. Yeah. So you are the founder of Microdosing for Healing and the Microdosing for Healing podcast. You are also a trainer, like you have an exclusive training and mastermind for healing artists, therapists, coaches, and wellness professionals incorporating microdosing into their professional practices. And already from this little introduction, I have a lot of questions, but let's go on with your bio. You are the founder of Solstice Mind and Body Spa. That is an integrated boutique wellness center providing massage therapy, meditation, yoga, Pilates, Qigong, and more, with highly regarded locations in Northern California, and with a gifted team of wellness and mind-body practitioners. So this is just a little introductions. And prior to founding the Solstice Spa, you were also you were based in San Francisco with your healing practice, and you were working with very international clientele, corporate leaders, musicians, professional athletes, and you have been featured in New York Times, CNN, health magazines, massage and body magazine, bodywork magazine, and in other numerous spa industry publications. So when I read your bio, I was like, wow, she accepted our invitation. We are honored usually to have guests, but you are a very special guest. So you are a renowned um, practitioner, healer, and you developed a passion because you healed yourself in fungi. And this is about the microdosing. But now it's just up to you to tell us where you come from. How did you get to this passion that led you to who you are today? And on the way of your story, we are going to ask you some questions.
Oh, thank you for that warm introduction. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I joke with people today. I'm kind of the world's least likely mushroom guide there is. If you would have told me I was doing this as a child, no one would have believed you. So I grew up, I wanted to be a doctor from the time I was a young child. So I've always been drawn to health and healing, but initially I did so kind of in the modern cultured framework that we exist within. And I was always averse to experimenting with drugs, even recreationally as a kid, because I had a grand mal seizure disorder that I was medicated for. So I was always wary of what I was doing to my mind and was hesitant to experiment with anything. So, fast forward, I went into the healing arts and was quickly taken off the path of medicine into quote unquote alternative healing. I went into body work, energy work, Reiki, and spent the bulk of my career doing that. So I was a body worker for many years, opened our Solstice studios, and we grew into a really beautiful array of diverse interdisciplinary alternative healing modalities. And somewhere along the way, I was introduced to someone who introduced me to the concept of microdosing, which was working with psychedelics, but at a teeny tiny way that would not destabilize my mind. So I thought that I was willing to be open to try. And I didn't really know what to expect. I thought maybe my meditation would deepen or I'd get a little bit more creative. but my seizure stopped, my headache stopped. I also received a whole host of other cognitive, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual benefits that continue to unfold to this day. And so when the pandemic hit, I was living in California. I ultimately lost my studios in the pandemic, and I was called to what can I do to support and serve my community online to kind of tide us over through this time. So I started a microdosing group back in 2020. And that has grown over time and become the work I'm very much meant to do in this lifetime. So, like you said, at this point, I serve participants, I have groups, I have a mentorship community of microdosing guides around the world, as well as a podcast and a professional training program for people who want to incorporate psychedelics and earth medicines into their practices as well.
Okay. First question, can I take over already?
Absolutely, Sabrina.
Me and Ken, it's just a love story about who races first. So you said that you wanted to become a doctor and then something, what is it? So did you study as to become a doctor or you stopped before, and what was that distracted you on the way?
Great question. Yeah, I'm so grateful because it was intuitive. It was my spirit guide, which I didn't know at the time it was her, but I had a very strong voice. I was studying pre-med, so I did all the hard stuff. I was like, you should have told me a few years ago before I went to college. So I studied pre-med in college. And yeah, I was just sitting outside in the courtyard at my college one day, and I had this very strong voice, and she said, "It's time for you to go west." I was in Pennsylvania at the time, and she said, "It's time for you to move across the country and go to California now." I was very early on, in college, and I was on a scholarship, so it was a big ask for me to do that. But I listened, and I went out and I found where it felt familiar and home in California, and I transferred out, and very shortly thereafter, I met my Reiki master, and then the rest was history from there.
So actually you were born with these friends, guides who were telling you, giving you advice and guiding you.
I think we all are. I think we all are. And each of us has a different level of sensitivity, but I think all of us have angels and guides around us. I do.
All right. So I have a bunch of other questions, but Ken, please go on.
Absolutely, Sabrina. Thank you. Kayse, that's fascinating. I have a similar story where I wanted to do healing and thought the doctor route was the same thing, but met an energy healer who was a Catholic priest at the time, and so it's a similar path. And do massage. I had to smile and laugh while you were talking because then massage therapy came in and learned Reiki and did all that. So what portion drew you to the microdosing, and how did you get involved in that? Because that's like a whole different thing. Were you guided to that, or were you something you just happened one day? How did that happen for you?
Yeah, it's a similar intuition and serendipity and timing. So similarly, I was on hike one day. This was before, um, well before the pandemic. Yeah, my studios were in swing, and I heard a voice that said, "It's time for you to go to Kauai. You need to go to Kauai." And the timing was not good whatsoever for me to be taking a trip to Kauai. So I thought, well, if I can go there for a purpose. And so I was meaning to get my yoga teacher training. And so I remember at the top of the hill that I was at, I pulled out my phone and I started Googling Kauai yoga. And by the time I got to the bottom of the hill, I had called and was in touch and booked on a yoga training retreat. Um, and in hindsight, it was the whole point of that retreat was to meet the person who would introduce me to microdosing. It was just that was the whole purpose and point. And I often think back, like if I hadn't listened to that intuition voice again, um, because my whole life changed, and little did I know that shortly thereafter my life was really about to change. in a big way. So that's how it began. And like I said, I think I was only really open to it because I had a long foundation of healing work behind me and because it was micro. I think I had heard about the therapeutic benefits of high dose psychedelics, but because of my seizure disorder and the sensitivity of my mind, I was always really hesitant. And because it was microdosing, I was open to trying it. And likewise, today, I work with a lot of people who aren't really drawn to work with high dose psychedelics, or they have a nervous system condition that they wish to work at a smaller dose. So that's how it began.
Wow. Was so many similarities. I spent 20 some years in Hawaii, and a lot of the crazy healing things that happened to me happened in Hawaii and were led to. So I love the synchronicity of all that. So it's like I feel like I've known you for 100 years already. Um, the as as you met your mentor in the microdosing and all of that in Hawaii, was that something that they did someplace else and came to Hawaii to be part of the yoga retreat that you were at? And was that in Hawaii, or did that take you someplace else where you started learning about that?
Yeah. So after that experience, they were a cultivator. So they
Hmm.
weren't guiding people, they were cultivating mushrooms for microdosing. And so once I started and I had such a beautiful healing effect, I read everything I could. I studied from everybody I could. I connected with everybody I could. Not that many people were doing microdosing publicly aside from Jim Fadiman and a handful of other guides and practitioners too in various parts of the world. So um, I learned as much as I could from them, but really it was learning from my own experience, then the people that I was supporting, and then during the pandemic, because we were in California, there was not much else to do. I ended up doing a lot of group work online. And so very soon, dozens of people became hundreds of people, and we really started to learn a lot just by the sheer number of people we were supporting. We started to connect the dots and see certain patterns in the effects that the medicine was having with different people. So that's how the training program ultimately came from that.
Amazing. Nature's such a healing, has so many healing things that happen in nature that we either have put away the knowledge of, or made it taboo to actually do. Uh, what are, like, because it's microdosing and stuff, is it something people can do in every state? Is it something people can be involved in? How does that work logistically, legally?
Yeah, and also
Mm-hmm.
worldwide, not only in the United States.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question because it's a moving situation. It's changing all the time. So it was a very different scene back in 2020. Very few people had even heard of it, right? And then it was very hard to find medicines and cultivators, especially if you lived in certain states and countries around the world. And so when we started out, we taught people how to cultivate their own. We have our cultivator created kits for people to grow mushrooms at home so they could grow their own medicines. And at the time, a lot of the states were locked down. So people had all kinds of time to bake bread and learn hobbies and grow mushrooms. And so that's how we started out. But fast forward now, 6 years later, there are a lot of churches, there's organizations and medicine makers that have set up religious protection organizations so that they can distribute nationwide. So thankfully, it's such an advantage now for access for people is we have a USA based medicine source that ships to all 50 states. Each state has a different legality and level of decriminalization. So depending on where you live, you have to be aware of, the situation where you live, but it's made medicine sourcing much, much easier. As far as internationally goes, we also have medicine makers in Australia, New Zealand, as well as the UK and throughout Europe.
Oh,
Beautiful.
all
Beautiful.
right. And my other question is, so you were a body worker, body work practitioner, coach. How did you decide to do completely, to switch completely from that to, was it just because of COVID and you had to shut down the centers, or was it at the same time happening this and you decided, okay, I will just drop that? And then the other question is, because nobody knows exactly what they are, these fungi, yeah, these mushrooms. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah. For myself, I was working with mushrooms on my own and just kind of supporting the people in my life, people I worked with, people in my community, my neighbors. But it was really the closure of my studios. Our studios focused on group classes and touch therapy. So we were the first to close and the very last people to open. So when we sat with like, well, what can I offer to our community to keep us together online that is connecting in the way we can, that's what came through. So it wasn't too much of a stretch. It was different for sure for a lot of people, but I had a large community in California, people who were already coming to us for healing services. So one kind of segued and overlapped with the other. But I'm so grateful now that I ended up going into body work and energy work because it was the perfect foundation for earth medicine work. The way when you're guiding and supporting people in earth medicine practice, it's so energetic. It's so energetic. And so having a foundation of Reiki and energy and understanding how energy works and moves with the body is one of the best foundations you can bring to practice. How do the mushrooms work? We still have no idea, to be totally honest. I think we know, I mean, we know that they work on the serotonin system, right? And we know that they quiet the default mode network in the brain. We know that they create new connections and kind of regrow the brain in certain areas and open up new pathways and connections. But I think we just know a teeny tiny tiny bit of what we're ultimately going to learn that they're capable of. Psilocin is just one chemical ingredient in psilocybin. And I always share with people mushrooms are ancient beings. They carry so much intelligence and wisdom in them. They're much older than we are as a species. So they have millennia of wisdom in each and every little spore. So I think we're just beginning to understand not just the mental benefits, but the whole array of spiritual as well as emotional benefits as well.
Yeah, and when you say earth medicine, yeah, you, of course, I think about whatever is underneath, because mushrooms, we only see a very small part of the mushroom coming outside the ground, but underground, it's like they communicate with everything. They communicate among themselves, they communicate with trees, other plants, whatever is underground is all together by this network that they built. I think it's called mycelium. I don't know how to pronounce it. And that's really, I think, where the most unknown part of the mushrooms is. Yeah.
Yes, you know that it's the mycelium.
Yeah.
And yes, it stretches around the world and underlies everything and connects everything. I think that's to me, one of the most profound messages of working with medicines is the understanding that we are all connected. There is nothing disconnected from anything on earth. We're all one and part of one body. And so what we do over here will always impact what we do over here. And we have forgotten that. And I think mushrooms are here to help remind us of that.
Fascinating, totally fascinating. Um, the how did you as you were along the path that you were taking, how did you incorporate your massage work, your energy work into this other modality of healing with the mushrooms? Was it, I mean, I see where they all fit together. I've been a massage therapist myself for close to 3 decades. And so I see the pattern that could happen, but how did that happen for you, and how did you bring it to your clients?
Yeah. So for myself, I started offering this work publicly when we were all closed. And so we couldn't see each other in person. So I've always
Mhm.
worked online. 100% of my practice is online today. However, many of the guides that I'm in community with or through my training programs are doing all kinds of creative things with microdosing and their modalities. So I have many massage therapists who are incorporating microdosing with their clients. And so microdosing is something they can do in their own time, and then they're coming in for regular body work. So it's really a perfect companion because you're integrating all the time with your body worker, and you have that physical touch and connection to your body worker when you see them in person, and then you're microdosing in your own time. My friend Lisa, as a colleague, she's actually setting up a training program specifically for body workers who want to incorporate earth medicines into body work practice. So my experience is yes, you can microdose on its own by itself, but mushrooms really like connection and community and want us to be together. It's a very relational medicine. And so I find that when you pair it with other healing modalities, that's when people's impact can be really, really profound.
Absolutely. I love the way you talked about the connection underground with the mushrooms. And I believe that we're all connected in ways, and some of that is above, where we're all in this neuro network of connection to everybody. So it's interesting that it comes from everywhere, not just above, not just below it, but everywhere. So that's interesting. I didn't know that, so I learned something incredibly new today. I love it.
And I have a question. May I?
Of course.
I have a question because in your bio, I read it. You were working with artists other than coaches. And because I was a former ballet dancer, I'm like, okay, so what is the benefits that artists can get from microdosing, from mushrooms? And because now, of course, I don't dance anymore, but I work with the subconscious, so nervous system. I am a breathwork also coach, and I I know what are the regulatory effects. I don't know if I can say regulatory, but when you breathe in a certain way, you can regulate the nervous system. Working on the subconscious level means working also on the nervous system. And how can artists, in a way, I'm curious because of what I was before. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is your
Absolutely.
experience?
Yes, I work with a lot of artists, and I always have been attracted to artists, magnetized to artists. So throughout my career, and so I work with a lot of artists, creatives, musicians, performers that are artistic in nature. I think it's a couple things. I think people who are naturally artistic and creative tend to be very open spiritually and sensitive to this world. And so that is a double-edged sword oftentimes for artists and sensitives is you're very intuitive, you're very creative, you're very in flow, but it's hard. Like earth is a heavy place to be for sensitive people, and so lots of times artists and creatives are medicated. They're put on antidepressants. They are limited because of the kind of the harshness of this world. And so when you work with earth medicines, it amplifies your natural intuition and artistry and creativity, but it also makes your nervous system stronger and more resilient. So you still can be very sensitive and creative, even more so, but it's easier to move through the world as a sensitive person, which is huge relief to a lot of artists and creatives. I also have worked with a lot of artists and creatives who it's beautiful to watch them grow and evolve in their artistry and their expression once they start working with psychedelics. So I work with a lot of painters And so painters, and I'll look at their work, their body of work is, it all looks somewhat similar. And they'll start working with medicines and they kind of tap into this new level and this new depth within themselves. And their painting all of a sudden takes on a whole nother personality and soul to their work. So it's, I think that the key to one of the keys, I think, to me to being an artist is to always be in that place of growing and evolution and expression. And working with medicines really, really supports that.
I have a question for you, Kayse. The As the microdosing, I know you mentioned that uh, it affected serotonin in the body and things like that. So, for an artist or for a musician, what what does that mean for them that raises them to that other level? Is it neurologic? How does it affect them neurologically, and how does it affect them on a level of increasing their creativity? Does it calm them? Does it what would you say to that?
I think it's a few
Actually,
things.
before you answer, I
Mhm.
am adding up to this question because it's like, is it because the mushrooms are going to enhance our brain functions? So what happens when people who are creative, what happens in their brain? This is really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's both and. So science has shown that when people have taken psilocybin, their default mode network quiets. It kind of
Hmm.
goes offline and it's dialed down. So the default mode network is our cognitive mind. It's our thinking, it's our judging mind, it's our critical mind, it's our comparison mind, it's our routine, repetition, our habits, our rigidity of thought. And so people oftentimes, as just we age, it's natural. We have an older brain, and so we get fixed. Our brain gets fixed in place. And also, too, just if we're very habit oriented and pattern oriented, which our society has been trained to be that, right? And so when you work with psilocybin, it kind of quiets that prominent mind and your creative mind, kind of the right side of your brain lights up.
Hmm.
And so it enables you to make new connections that you didn't do before. Openness to other ideas, other possibilities. That's why so many people love it for creative work and brainstorming and engineering work because you just think differently than you have. You see between things rather than seeing the thing, you see the space between things suddenly. So, as an artist, um, that's a beautiful quality to have because you tend to naturally be that way a little bit. And so, when it just amplifies that quality as well. And to I think it quiets that ruminating mind, which is why I think it's so healing for anxiety and depression. So it psilocybin gets a lot of attention for curing depression and curing anxiety. It can and it does, and I've seen it do so, but the mechanism with which it works is the opposite of an antidepressant. Rather than suppressing something, psilocybin is just quieting that overthinking, ruminating mind, which is either worrying about the future or it's kind of looping on the past always. And like the self shaming and the self judgment and the self criticism just quiets and it brings you more into presence. And so anxiety and depression naturally subside versus kind of a numbing quality.
So it's like giving space to parts of our brain that when you are in that condition are completely shut down. Beautiful.
I loved the way, Kayse, that you talked about between the spaces, and I've always in my mind that's how I thought life should be because it's it's a place where nobody else most people aren't. They're in this crazy maze of uh, anxiety, confusion, energetically, so much going on. But if people only could move between the spaces, it's an open pathway to something. So it's like confirmed some old thoughts that I had that came to me many years ago. So I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can, but would you be able to give us to tell us about some anecdotes or some stories, that you can share with us and with the people who are going to watch our
Oh, for sure.
conversation?
I have lots. I have lots. Yeah, I mean, it depends what your listeners would love to hear about, but really it's so incredibly diverse. Oftentimes people come to me and they're like, I have this going on. Can it work for this? Can it work for that? And it's really so incredibly diverse. There's lots of physical health things to start with. That's typically one of the first things people come to. So any kind of nervous system condition at all. I've worked with, because of my seizures, people hear that I healed my seizures. So I've worked with a lot of people with seizure disorders, and a dog that had seizures too. So people have now tried with their pets too, and it's been effective for their pets as well. Um, any kind of headaches, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, stroke recovery, concussions, TBIs, lots of people who've been in car accidents or skiing accidents frequently who never regained the cognitive functioning that they had prior. Long tail COVID is another one that there's a lot of people out there that are still battling brain fog and long haul symptoms from COVID from years ago. Very effective for that too. For mental and emotional things, lots of depression, anxiety, but also any kind of addictions, any kind of things that are tied to looping behaviors and that looping ruminating mind. So everything from eating disorders to OCD to alcohol addiction or dependency. Lots of people, once they start microdosing, just stop drinking alcohol
So, but
effortlessly. It just
they should
happens.
have an intention anyway. I mean, they have to be willing to stop, or because they start microdosing, eat spontaneously.
It spontaneously happens. It spontaneously happens.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of people who come and they say, I'm drinking more alcohol, or I'm smoking cigarettes, or I'm smoking too much cannabis. I would like to, my intention is to do less of this. But I've also had many, many people who never had the intention of stopping drinking alcohol and just let it go very naturally. Because I think as you come into more coherence energetically with mushrooms and you come into a greater connection with your physical body, you can feel the effects of alcohol more in your body. And you just naturally start to eat and take in substances that are more in energetic resonance with who you're becoming versus the heavier and denser energies of food and alcohol. Lots of times people ask me like, do I have to give up alcohol? No, you don't. Like if you love, yes. I mean, if you're in Italy, I'm never going to say don't drink, have a glass of wine with dinner. Um, but people move from drinking alcohol every day to having it be more of like, I'm having a great dinner out or it's a special occasion.
Okay.
And then the last one I'll say a lot of people come for now is spiritual development. Lots and lots of people are come to me and say, I've really been spiritual since I was a little kid. I've always had a connection to the natural world, to spirit, to God, to source. It's always framed differently. But they say I've never been able to find what I'm seeking in organized religion. And I have this deep sense of spirituality that I would really like to cultivate and have the support of the natural world. So that's another really beautiful reasons to practice, just to reconnect with nature and your experience of spirit.
And how does their experience with spirit and spirituality can be enhanced or supported? Because it's microdosing, so we know that this kind of mushrooms, if you take them in normal dosage, they give you altered state of mind or altered state of consciousness. What about with the microdosing then?
Yes, yes. I mean, it's surprising to some people how little you need to take to have an impact and effect. But I especially see this in people who have laid a foundation of contemplative practice, who've done lots of body work, who've been a Reiki practitioner, who've been a longtime meditator, a Qigong practitioner, um, because they've laid a foundation of a lot of energy work and spiritual development before they started practicing. So it's different for each person, but I've definitely seen pronounced spiritual development in people just from microdosing as well.
And Kayse, how, when you talk about microdosing, so our audience knows, what does that mean? How is that done?
Yeah, great question. So, in terms of mushrooms, microdosing is typically somewhere between 50 milligrams and 250 milligrams in my experience. I work with a lot of super sensitive people and creatives, so they tend to be able to dose at quite a low range, say 50 or 100 milligrams. Before we had medicines, made for us, cultivating wise, you would grow your own mushrooms and then have a little dehydrator and often dehydrate them, dry them, make them into capsules is the easiest way to get consistent dosing. But thankfully now we have a lot of beautiful medicine makers who make, we call them finished medicines, that usually come in tinctures or capsules, or tablets that are already pre-made so that you know exactly what dosage you're working at.
Mm.
Can, I have a question too. Can you overdose on it?
So mushrooms are non-toxic and not habit forming. So you will journey though. You will ultimately reach a dose where you're going to have effects. You're going to see colors and have, distorted and alterations. Um, Typically in our community, we tend to start people lower than where they ultimately land at. So it's pretty rare unless you're really, really super sensitive. But at most, you just see colors are a little brighter, sounds, your senses are just kind of dialed up a little bit, are the first sign that you're kind of outside of the microdosing range and you've kind of gone into what is called like the mini dose range.
Right.
And what about the period of time? Sorry, Ken. Just 1 second. How about how long people are supposed, when you start microdosing, are you going to be on microdosing your entire life because it becomes like a routine? Or is it a cycle? Or, you take it for a certain condition or certain health condition or just for spiritual enhancement for a certain period of time? How does it work
Thanks for
time-wise?
asking this because this is one of the biggest misconceptions we hear now. Because a few years ago, not enough people had heard about microdosing, but now that it's more mainstream, people confuse it with pharma. So people think
Mm.
taking mushrooms is going to be like taking an antidepressant or taking a sleeping pill, that they're going to do it every day. It's like a supplement they're going to take every day. It's not like that. I always encourage people to treat it like a friend, a spirit, a relationship that you're participating in. It's not a drug pharmaceutical experience that's going to be consistent, that you're going to take every day over time. So some people will do, I tend to work with like 6 week cycles with people. So we'll do a 6 week protocol together and then I'm with them all the way. So some people have a very fast experience and like right from day one, they're connected to the medicine. They're having an experience physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And then after 6 weeks, they might want to take a break and integrate for a bit. Other people, and I'd say most people practice for about 3 months consistently before taking their first break. So that would be on average. And then, of course, there's some people that like to practice a little bit longer, before they consider taking a break. So each person is unique and different. A lot depends on the preparation and kind of what they came in with before they began impacting their process. But I would say most people, the average would be to plan for about 90 days.
Daily.
It depends on each person. So
Uh-huh.
there's different protocols in the
Okay.
field. So I know you mentioned Paul. We were talking chit-chatting before we started. You mentioned Paul Stamets. He's a famous mycologist in the field. So some people like the Stamets protocol, which is more of a consecutive day dosing. So that's like a 4 days on, 3 days off, or 5 days on, 2 days off. That was the one I practiced with when I first started. I tend to practice 5-2 mostly, but there's other protocols. The Fadiman protocol, named after Dr. James Fadiman. That protocol is 1 day on, 2 days off. And that one is effective for all the medicines, but I find it really very ideal for LSD microdosing. And then a couple other protocols might be every other day dosing or consecutive dosing every day for the first 6 weeks.
Thank you. Yeah, because this is interesting. People, as you said, people might think this is like a drug, a medication, and how long should I take it then? And after they stop and they take a break, what happens to the nervous system?
Yep. I think that's what surprises people. And I know a lot of people that I work with, they're nervous about taking their break because they're like, I got all of this goodness, right? And is that gonna go away when I stop and they take a break and it doesn't go away? Like, oh, it was me. And so they're like, oh, it was me all along. So the mushrooms are just kind of helping you tap into your own innate healing. So I will go many, 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 many months now without actively working with the mushrooms. I never worry about my seizures coming back because with the mushrooms, my nervous system is at a whole different set point
So it's
that,
like allowing the brain to open new neural paths and stabilizing it then.
yeah. Yeah. So people tend to, when they come back to practice, which is common, they tend to work with a different intention later. So I have lots of people now that I've been supporting for 5 or 6 years now. And 5 or 6 years ago, when I met them, they had a very specific intention. They were having headaches, or they were moving off of alcohol, or they were depressed.
Mm.
And now, 6 years later, they're at a completely different experience of life and they're coming for other reasons. They're working on their growth or their spiritual development, or they're working relationally with their spouse and
Okay.
wanting to microdose together. So it changes with us.
Yeah, but is it really so consequential? So someone comes because they have migraines and they want to ease to have some support about that. Is it really 100% sure that once they start microdosing, they start seeing right away the benefits just with that? Or maybe it's a more holistic experience of benefits? And how, because the brain doesn't work with one specific, maybe we are suffering from migraines, but maybe in our brain there is other things that need to be balanced. So how do the mushroom work?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. We joke because you come for one thing, but you get it all. Like even people, I'll have a lot of clients, for example, who they'll come to me and they'll go, Case, I can't forget. I can't remember anything. Like my memory is shot. I'm like forgetting my grandchildren's name, and I don't want any of that spiritual stuff. Like I'm not into the woo-woo stuff. But they start practicing and yes, their memory gets better. But I talk to their kids and their family and they're like, he is so much kinder. He's so much softer. He's like taking care of the plants now.
Amazing. I lost you. I'm coming back.
I mean, indigenous tribes all over the world have used mushrooms and to achieve different effects almost in every culture. I mean, sort of now you hardly hear about it, except so one of the questions I have is like now people are using mushroom coffees and
Hmm. I think it's just our modern, fitting mushrooms into our modern approximation of visional is like we're very into optimization and longevity right now, right?
mm,
And so mushrooms support that? Absolutely. So I embrace everybody's reasons for coming, whether it's mental health or optimization or anti-aging. Oftentimes, I see lots of people with autoimmune conditions and inflammation. So I think it meets people where people are, which is very mushroom. Right? They love all parts of the forest. Um, so it's whatever people come from and pair it with is supportive. I think coffee uniquely because people like coffee because it sharpens us mentally. I,
Mm.
I know I am in trouble in the morning when I don't have coffee. And lion's mane mushrooms are also really, really beautiful for kind of cognitive clarity and sharpening. So it's probably the mushroom we pair most with psilocybin. If you have people listening that are really keen to improve their cognitive function and their memory, I love pairing psilocybin with lion's mane mushroom together. And if you have coffee too, that's fine.
Very good. When are you using different types of mushrooms for different effects, or is it one? How do you decide what to use if you do different ones? How do you decide what to use? How do you guide that?
Great question. So, yes, I believe all the mushroom family have their own unique qualities and benefits. And so there's different strains of psilocybin. Even within the psilocybin family, there's many, many different strains that you can grow. And they each have their own unique qualities. So when we're working with someone, we listen to as a guide what they're bringing, their intentions, how they're doing mentally, physically, emotionally, what they're hoping to experience in life. And that kind of gives us clues which strains might be particularly great for them. Probably the number one strain we start out with, just because it's such a beautiful mushroom for beginners, is golden teacher psilocybin.
Okay.
Nice, nice. So it's something that people should be coached on how to do, or can people just go out there and seek it out and do it, or is there a actual plan to doing it? And how do you, when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to do this, I want to achieve this," how do you get them started, and how is it something you can self do, or should it be through somebody who knows what they're doing?
All of the above. It's a great question because um, I did it largely myself when I first started out and had amazing benefits too. So I never, if people don't have access to a guide or a coach, yes, it's likely you can do it on your own and still get great benefits. But I find when you have a guide, it's so much so advantageous to understand what you're moving through, because working with mushrooms is not like anything you've ever experienced before. Mushrooms communicate with each person through their body, through their mind, through relationally, through nature and animals. And so it's really, really helpful to have the soundboard and the reflection with someone to help explain and translate what is actually happening. Mushrooms love to communicate through emotions as well. And so it's very common for people to start and feel a lot of grief arise, a lot of heaviness and fatigue arise, a lot of crankiness and irritability arise. And it's always connected to certain things that if you're on your own, you might just stop and go, this isn't working for me. What is going on? Like I'm just crying and I'm napping. But actually, if you have a guide that can help translate and be beside you to explain why you're shedding these emotions and shedding this density to get to the other side of that, it can be really, really helpful to have a group, a coach, or a group work. I love group work is my favorite for this work. So to have a community of peers that are beside you can be really, really helpful.
Absolutely. You also mentioned, as addictions, alcohol, you mentioned cannabis. And so a lot of people look at cannabis as this amazing healing tool. It calms them, and I've seen both sides of the effects of that, and it's a little bit crazy. So a lot of people are totally afraid of that. How how do you look at that compared to what you're doing? What do people have to expect there, or uh, what's the difference of that? Because you also said that people were the mushrooms helped them get off the addictions that they were having, including cannabis.
That's a beautiful question. And like I've seen both sides of it. I've had people who have that's like cannabis is their medicine and they have a beautiful relationship with it, and it's very positive and very healthy. But I've also worked with a lot of people who started off having a good experience, but they became dependent and it started to have side effects that were not supportive of their life. And so I've seen both things. I think it's the way I've seen it play out is cannabis and psilocybin just have very opposite frequencies, like
Mm.
very opposite frequencies. And so cannabis and mushrooms tend to quiet people down and slow. It's a little heavier in its resonance, where when people start with mushrooms do to us what they do in nature. They remediate. They go right to the dead. They go right to the old tree, the tree stump. And so they do that to us oracally and on our energy. And so when people start working with mushrooms, I can see them week over week. They get lighter, they're brighter, their frequency is lighter and brighter and um, more cheerful, almost, if cheerful's a resonance. And so I think people gravitate to one to the other naturally. So when I get people on their intake forms, when they share with me, I tried cannabis once and it was really not for me. I felt weird. I felt paranoid. I felt this. To me, that's a really good sign that mushrooms, they're actually going to do very, very well with mushrooms because their energy is probably much more naturally synced in that direction.
So they see right away, like few days. How long does it take for an average user to see changes, benefits? Weeks?
It can be fast. It can be really fast. So the people who tend to experience notice effects like within days of starting with mushrooms are people who tend to have laid a foundation. Like
Mm.
they've already done a lot of the work, they've done the massage, they've done the meditation, they've done the yoga, um, and they start with mushrooms and it kind of brings it all together. And they receive results of things that they have tried so hard to overcome. So it can be anywhere from the first few days. Some people take, I would say everybody, it's very, very seldom that it's 4 or 5 weeks in that no one has noticed something. The only exception is if someone is taking an antidepressant and some of the sleeping pills, they blunt because they work on the same receptor. I always describe it, it's kind of like if you have something else sitting in that seat, right? The mushrooms can't sit in the seat with them completely. You're going to experience some effect, like, but you're not going to be able to perceive it and notice it as much if you're on, say, an SSRI. So sometimes it'll take longer. You just need a little bit more patience, or you'll need to work at a higher dose of mushrooms to get some effect.
Kayse, also just for our audience out there and for my own curiosity, like a lot of athletes, people with specific jobs go through some sort of testing to see if they're on any altering type of
Substances.
self-medication.
Yes.
And how does that work with this? Does does that show up? Is it something people should be concerned about? What what's your experience there?
Great question. This comes up a lot, and I've worked with a lot of people who are very senior in government who were very concerned about this a few
Yeah.
years ago. Yeah, so psilocybin is unique in that it clears from the body very quickly. So it's unlike cannabis that stays in your hair and your nails for many, many months afterward. Psilocybin within 24 hours completely clears at any dose. So whether you're working at a microdose or a journey dose, it doesn't stay in your system. So as long as you know when your test is going to be, or say you have a surgery coming up, that's also very common when people are like, I'm going to be on anesthesia and taking a bunch of other drugs that I don't want to have to worry about. Can I stop microdosing in advance? As long as you stop a few days in advance, you're going to be, it's clear from your body. Up until a few years ago, psilocybin didn't even really appear on
Mm.
most tests thing, but now that it's coming back into popular culture and healing modalities, people are more aware of it now.
Are there any contraindications to using it?
Yes, there's very few for microdosing because not going anywhere. You're staying in the earth realm and you're not really destabilizing your mind. It's very subtle and gentle, and you have complete control, over your dose. With higher dose medicines, there are some contraindications, especially if people have had extreme dissociative disorders like schizophrenia or other mind where your mind is destabilized. There's
Psychosis, something like that.
psychosis.
Yeah.
Yes. And so otherwise, though, medication wise and contraindications, there are pharmacists in the space that we work closely with who teach in our training programs and who are available to our clients who, if you're on medications for certain conditions and diagnoses, they're available to cross check your pharmaceutical medications with
Hmm.
psilocybin to help you whether you want to concurrently use them and are doing well. And then a lot of people also love to taper off of their pharmaceuticals once they get relief with mushrooms from some of the underlying conditions that they were ultimately medicated for. Lots of people ultimately taper off their pharma meds.
Absolutely. Is there an age group that you work with? Is it something that someone very young can do, or someone very old can do, or anywhere in between?
Pregnant women,
Yeah.
babies. Yeah.
Awesome question. Awesome question. So I have worked with all ages, literally all ages. So I've worked, the youngest in my programs and community has been from 19 to 93 was our oldest participant. And then sometimes people come to me with their questions around their children. So it typically is my child's having seizures, has a severe nervous system condition, and increasingly autism too, autism spectrum. We get a lot of inquiries with that. So I don't work directly with children, but what I do is support their parents. Oftentimes, the parent will be a participant in a group program. They will teach themselves how to microdose, how it works, and then they can support their child. So I've worked with to great success with the parents to work with nervous system conditions for children.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
how do
Thank
they respond? Do they respond better than adults, or it just depends on our neurological potential, actually?
I couldn't judge better, but they've had equivalent results to adults. Yeah. My tendency is to think, and this is just from witnessing, this is not scientific evidence, but I tend to think because children already have a very flexible mind. They're very open-minded, they're very close to spirit very naturally, they're close to nature very naturally, that I think if we make these very gentle interventions early in support of children, it's a very little bit and a very small intervention goes a long way. Like I think if had I microdosed as a child, I don't think I ever would have developed a seizure condition.
you.
Because you started as a young adult already. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's very interesting. And also because I think children are more similar to how animals respond. Because, as you said, yes, they're closer to nature, but it's also because they are less influenced, less impacted by the environment. They didn't have the time to be affected already very much, so their beliefs are not as hard and rigid as adults. Yeah.
Exactly. They're more sensitive to their environment. They're very attuned to their environment like animals are. So it's very common when people start microdosing that I see this in my male clients a lot, where they're like, I feel a little bit like my memory's a little bit better. I'm procrastinating a little bit less, but I don't really notice that much effect. But then their children come to them and go, Dad, what are you doing? You're completely different. Like you're completely different. Or their pets are very different around them. Their pets were always just kind of indifferent, but suddenly their pets and their cat wants to cuddle with them, and the dog is laying next to them and touching them. And so I think the more sensitive and attuned a being is, they're going to be the first to notice when your energy shifts.
Yeah.
Mm.
Fascinating. Oh my God.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This was like Wonderland and Neverland together.
That's a good
Wow.
way to put it, Sabrina.
Yeah. Not
I,
Alice, but
I,
just
I
Wonderland
think,
and Neverland.
I think Alice did a few mushrooms herself. I love it.
Wow. So how people, do you have other questions, Ken?
I,
First of all.
I could probably go on for hours, but
Yeah.
uh, one of the things is how do how do we know about these things? How do we contact
Yeah.
you? How do people find out more? Because obviously there's more to this, and we're here to create some curiosity in people's minds to know that there's something different out there, that everything isn't pharmaceutical medicine or anything. There's something above the physical that is bigger than all of us. So how do we find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for such great questions. It's been delightful to be with you guys. Yes, we intentionally created like lots of different access points because everybody learns differently. Everybody likes to receive and explore things differently. So we created lots of different. So everything lives at microdosingforhealing.com. And we have a podcast with lots and lots of episodes with lots of different guides. So lots of different approaches, lots of different topics. So people can check out if they have a condition or a specific intention. It's likely we've done an episode on that before. We also created a microdosing starter package for people who just want to dip their toe in. Like a lot of people were telling me they're going online, but they were totally overwhelmed. They're like,
Hmm.
there's so much information out there now, and I don't know who to trust, and I don't know what's right. So we created just a really accessible, it's $35 microdosing starter package. So you kind of get a 6-week video series of what to expect in your first 6 weeks of practice. You get all sourcing, all the professional resources that we've worked with for many, many years that we know and trust. And then we also have group programs for people who want a supported experience with other people. So we do those seasonally year round. Um, but just know there's lots and lots of people to support you. It's a really beautiful, helpful, caring community. So just step in.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So thank you again, Kayse.
Thank you both.
This has been really, I don't know, a discovery call, I think. A discovery conversation of this beautiful world of mushrooms. Yeah, really. Thank you for sharing with us all your insights and knowledge. And I wish you, I think that you're going to come back someday. So it's like, yeah, I guess there will be some more coming up. And what else do we have to say, Ken? I always forget.
Well, I think if this intrigued anyone, you should subscribe
Yeah.
to Sabrina, to your YouTube channel.
Channel. Yeah.
And remember to hit the little bell so
Yes.
you get notifications. Our,
Thank you.
our commercial break.
Yeah, the commercial break in the end. But no, thank you for Kayse, and thank you, Ken, and thanks for everybody that is going to enjoy. I'm sure everybody who is watching this is going to enjoy and learn a lot of things and know that there are opportunities and options that are beneficial and that work at different levels. Yeah. So that was for me the crucial part. Okay. See you soon then. I'm stopping the recording.